All right, I think I'm short one panelist. And I want to pull someone else up here so we have another voice. I know it's always hard to volunteer for something like this, but I'm going to throw it out there. Would someone like to volunteer to come up and join us? We are going to try and talk about technology. Would you like to join us? Come on up. There's John. Okay. All right. Why don't we all introduce ourselves very quickly? First and last name, that works for me. My name is Gus Creedon, and I work with LMI Government Consulting in McLean, Virginia. Oh.
I'm John Coles with Dell Computer in the knowledge management area.
My name is Carla Flippo, and I'm an independent consultant.
Hi, Chris McPhail. I work with KeyBank in Cleveland, and I'm an enterprise architect.
I'm John Lewis, and I teach organizational learning here at Penn State, and I also have my own consulting company and also a newly formed partnership. But I do know a bit about technology. I was punching holes in cards back in the day.
All right, so what I want to try and do is spend some time talking the tech speak. So for those of you that may not be familiar with the deep knowledge management tools, you might be able to write some of these things down and take them home with you and maybe do a little bit of research on your own. So, but the first thing I want to talk about is just the center in general. For the stakeholders, and there are many different types of stakeholders. We have business stakeholders, we have technical stakeholders, but it should be a symbiotic environment where everyone learns from each other. That's the knowledge transfer piece of this. So the technology piece is pretty important, as well as the strategic planning piece of it. So my first question is to the panel, and I want to try and keep this a fairly short answer so we can move around quickly, is in your mind, who would be a technology stakeholder in the center? And so, for example, it could be a consulting outfit, a third-party software provider, a third-party provider, and so on. Who's a stakeholder? Would be the student, would be the software engineer. Who are the stakeholders? Technology stakeholders. You want to try first, John?
Oh, no, thanks. I think that a couple of ways I'm thinking about technology. One are the people who provide technology, and then there's technology users. So I think that, and that's the symbiotic relationship you have to have working. And I think that there's actually a lot of opportunity for people who provide technology and do technology to be challenged to move towards a semantic type of technology, towards a more collaborative technology that brings semantics into the interface. I think that there's people that would be challenged and looking for the next challenge that would be interested in some of the kinds of things that we'd be wanting to do, and of course from the user standpoint, I think that there's going to be a bleed over in the people that would be the typical user across the board that would want to use the center for different reasons, that they would have to have some expectations about that technology that it's going to do more than just what they've seen before. That there's something in the way that we do what we do with technology that's not something that we've always done before, that's going to actually make this something new and different.
Well, I can't say particularly which exact stakeholders it would be, that if I were to envision what type of environment would I come into when I come to the center. Could I answer that that way? All right. The kind of environment that I would imagine, and I've been kind of talking about this a little bit today, is more of a simulation environment where you might have a large room about this size, and you'll have the latest technology in it. You might have, if you're bringing in a product development firm that really wants to kind of reculturalize a whole department, where they would all come in and have like a session where they actually work in a new type of technological environment that they don't normally would get the chance to do. And so they learn new skills and have become, you know, culturally adept and cultivate new values using maybe a higher technology that they may not have access to, at least initially. And they want to prove out that this new environment might work for them. But actually to have some kind of a laboratory simulator where people can come in, even communities, we were talking about the different kinds of communities, having them, each community have a specialization. Instead of having 50 windmill companies, have regional, you know, hubs where the expertise is collected, and the environment has to be such where you could do simulations and things like that.
So that would be organizations who might benefit from the R&D that goes on in this center.
Certainly.
Possibly directly.
Even communities.
Yes.
You know, absolutely.
Okay.
I thought the answer was pretty obvious, is that, you know, we're all stakeholders. So I was having a little trouble there at the beginning. So it's the consumers, the users, the creators of the technology, but I think there's also a thread that needs to be understood there based on Carla's point of that it is an area for people to come in and understand how new technology works, but also I think you've got to look at it from being able to teach the core basics of how did that technology come about to be used efficiently. A knowledge management system, I was mentioning this to someone earlier, a knowledge management system can be based on sheets of paper and boxes. It doesn't need to be a computer. And so running through exercises like that to get across, hey, how the technology really benefits somebody can be very valuable.
So I think you kind of touched on it this morning when you were talking about prototyping. From a technology perspective, in order to get buy-in, there's a real need to prototype a system or prototype a tool. One of the things that I could see or that I could envision is showing not only the people that utilize the technology how to do it effectively and efficiently, but show the people who deliver the technology how it works and how other people can get value from, for instance, their business units.
So we have the stakeholders who are driving the need for innovation. We have the students who are conducting the innovation, and then the guys who benefit from it. So that covers, as you said, John, everyone's a stakeholder.
Well, I think you're missing leadership. Leadership commonly hears about and reads about some kind of whiz-bang technology and says, yeah, my organization needs that. They should go do that. All right, well, let's get the leaders in here, the C-suite people, and sit them down in front of a social platform.
All right, here's another mind bender. In the software development world that I'm familiar with, we seek out new technologies, and we try and people see the technology and they try to develop a use case for it. So they see the technology, they try and build the technology. Let's just keep with that paradigm. I know it's not really the right one, but what technology do you think the center should invest in? And this is your personal opinion. I have my own. I know exactly what I would tell them to do. What would you tell them to invest in?
Well, coming from the automotive background primarily, I'm just having, like, excuse me, a senior moment or a brain fart or whatever you want to call it, but I can't remember the name of the software. There was a software company that they were using to actually tie best practices to the actual engineering solution. And those types of, I think for this heavily manufacturing reliant area would be a very good way to start to bring in those types of software where small manufacturing firms could actually tie their practices right into the design and development of either their product or their manufacturing tooling, and have meters come up where they're reading these so they can actually see when they're in and out of tolerances and things of that nature. That's fairly sophisticated, and very few small companies are able to leverage that. I think that would be phenomenal to have an environment like that. I think that would move everything along.
I was speaking to John from Business Genetics, is that right? Yeah, and I know that he does that type of thing. So.
I think it really depends on what you're looking to do. Are you looking for collaboration? Because there are specific collaboration tools. Goodyear this morning mentioned wikis and blogs. There are a plethora of good ones out there. If you're strictly looking at a knowledge base, I think that there's maybe some gaps in some of the way that the enterprises view things. There was a number of conversations that I had this morning about ITIL shops, where the ITIL tools may not necessarily, the knowledge management modules might not necessarily fit the need. So I think it kind of depends on what you're looking to do. But I think wikis are really good for collaboration, and I think some of the open forum tools that are out there are really good too. I'm a big proponent of open source. So there are things out there for the small business person that can fire something up fairly quickly and maybe host it out in the cloud, and it's inexpensive and it's something that they can use.
So if we could back up just a little bit, first of all, it's a very good point, which is that a lot of times we'll start to use technology for the sake of technology. And a lot of that happens because of the way that as humans react with words, that we produce them, but then they affect our thinking and how much we can think because of those words. So I actually try to get my clients to stop saying technology because it's too much of an abstraction. I say it's a technological enabler. What are the technological enablers that we need? Because then it forces your mind into another, shifts it into another gear where you start considering something that maybe paper could solve for, and it doesn't have to be a computer. We've seen too many cases where we computerize something. We take a paper process and make it exactly the same on a computer instead of automating it and simplifying and doing other things, because now it is on a computer and it could be systematized, but we just computerize. So when we talk about technological enabling something, I would say that my preference would be the first thing we would want to do is look at a comprehensive competency model that says, what are all the things in a knowledge flow that need to happen? Because we've heard a bunch of them today, sort of sporadic. Sometimes we hear sharing. Sometimes we hear while we're innovating. Sometimes we hear we have to capture it. And these are all words we've seen independently and maybe in different models. But I do believe that there are some pretty good comprehensive competency, knowledge-based organizational models that if we start with, we could start to do some assessments and say, now, where are the biggest gaps that we need a technological enabler to set on top of solving those specific components?
Yeah, and I was going to say that having those technological enablers available so people can experience those. The center, I would envision, would have access to conference calls, chat, video chat capabilities, presentation capabilities that can be shared. When you exchange learning and when you exchange information, when you share knowledge, what are some of the vehicles and modes to do that? One of them is, like we're doing here, in person, but being on a phone call with someone halfway around the world, a lot of those conversations are pretty black and white, especially if there's a language, somewhat of a language barrier. When you flip on a video chat, the whole demeanor of that conversation changes immediately, and it becomes more humanistic. and you're able to actually translate and pass along more information and knowledge than you can just via email or phone call.
The way I think about it, if I may, is to build a knowledge base, and I use that term technically, not notionally. To build a knowledge base, you've got to consume content, and it could be several formats. You need to store it in a usable format, and then you've got to be able to index it intelligently, and then deliver it to the user. So you've got several steps in the knowledge management life cycle of this knowledge base. Do we identify tools that we can plug into each of those steps? For example, on the front end, when we're consuming content, do we need to use text analytics tools on it to tear it apart, present possibly a starting line for taxonomies, that type of thing? When you get to the consumption piece, what formats can you use to consume the content? So there's so many different aspects of it, but I like the collaboration, the need to collaborate can be enriched by, especially by the video type of conferencing. Okay. All right. In what do we call them? The five webinars that led up to this meeting. We identified three, I don't want to call them career paths, but three labels for the knowledge management, I'll call them professional. The knowledge scientist, who conducts research and development. The knowledge engineer, who identifies how to use that technology. And then the knowledge manager, who thinks about the strategic application of the system. And on the last panel, Rosemary, there's Rosemary, she mentioned, what we need is a database of experts and identify the knowledge management experts. So I would suggest, or I am suggesting, that one of the first projects might be to develop a database of expertise using a knowledge management software package. That might be one project they could undertake. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is think about for a minute what you might suggest they undertake if it were your pet project. Any takers?
Well, I'd like to see the simulator, the room. I'd like to see that environment. I could imagine it where you would have the CEOs not only in front of the room, actually going through the process so that they would understand the changes that they intend to make either in an organization or in a community. I could imagine a community coming in wanting to understand the business codes, best practice business codes, and being able to interface video with maybe Washington State, where they have very progressive business, building codes. I could imagine that. I would love to be the person to help facilitate the simulations, the different simulations, setting up the different softwares, setting up the different environments so that people actually walk away with a holistic experience.
I would definitely say you need some type of cloud-based technology that makes it really easy and flexible. I would envision that groups come into the center. There may be a the June collaboration meeting that occurs. Those people, that June group, can then several months later still continue to use the form that's attached to the cloud. It's attached to Kent State. So I definitely see some kind of hub and spoke type scenario. Now there's probably also the flip side of that is if you've got some people that are really scared about sharing information and in the cloud, all right, you got to have a little bit of technology that's probably hosted here on campus to allow for some secure interactions that occur.
Definitely agree that that who's who database is an early quick win. And I think that we need to be thinking in terms of what are quick wins, and I think that's going to be very useful. The other thing I would add is an idea that Denise has talked about in her research into where the knowledge resides. Is there's a whole lot of knowledge that's locked up in journals that business just doesn't have access to, not aware of. And I think that there's just a gate that's just sitting there, that there's some policy and other things that need to be solved, certainly a technological enabler that could be involved in just freeing up this flood of information that's on one side of a wall and not getting to the other.
So as a part of the last panel, in our discussions in the back corner, we were talking about a crowdsourcing model, and you mentioned the cloud. And here in the Cleveland area, I think it's once a year during the summertime, a bunch of technology people get together. They donate their time and they help people come up with systems and knowledge. And I think there's an opportunity for the center to be that repository of problems and get together on some type of a basis, use maybe cloud technologies, and start to knock out some problems that maybe small businesses having, maybe that nonprofits are having, or large corporations. Get everybody together and just focus in on a problem.
I was going to say, with the vast input of information and knowledge, you're definitely going to have the ability to manage that with either a digital librarian or taxonomist. Those roles are going to have to be in place as well.
Yeah, one of my pet challenges is to engage not just the stakeholders, but the user community in helping us curate a knowledge base. And you know, how do you do that? Could they conduct research to determine if gaming, an approach to gaming, would engage the user community? I work on a project where we're building taxonomies, and how can I get the subject matter experts that are not in my school to come in and contribute knowledge? My daughter's loaded this crossword puzzle game on my phone, and I thought, wow, what a great way to engage the community if you can tool that and have them come in and play, and by playing, they're adding intelligence to the curation to the ontology. So
I think gamification of knowledge is really key. Look at all the iPhone and Android apps out there, things like Foursquare, where you earn points. Yeah. And yeah, and I think there's an opportunity where you could start to solve knowledge problems via gamification.
I wish I could add knowledge by playing Angry Birds. I love Angry Birds. Okay, so now here's kind of an on-the-ground question, boots on the ground question. What methods have you used, methods, techniques, tools have you used to collect knowledge? Have you engaged in that practice yet?
I think it was spoken very eloquently before that technology as an enabler. I find myself, even 30 years old, still hands in with technology. The best tools that I come up with is a marker, a whiteboard, or a pen and a piece of paper. I think the missing opportunity there is how do you digitize that so that it's consumable for other people.
Yeah, let me just make sure we capture this point. I can picture one of the questions is, what's the physical presence look like? I think there has to be a lot of, like, all the walls are whiteboards. There has to be a way to capture ideas, and it's very evident when you walk in. It's a different kind of a room.
Now, to add to that, let's say we have a room of whiteboards. How do you capture those pictures? I take pictures with my phone and email myself. All right, but now I've got an image.
Actually, there's a little thing that you can add to your little pen, and it'll actually capture everything right onto the computer as you write it.
All right,
It's possible to do.
but the next step is, how do you add metadata to that? So you can go back and retrieve it out of your knowledge base. I have images stored in a root directory on our corporate drive, and unless I label it properly.
Sure, of course, it's always that, isn't it? As far as knowledge capture is concerned, there are a lot of methods. There's actually processes and methods that could be employed. I worked a great deal with the insurance industry, and they were trying to do knowledge capture, and so we had a process of interviewing. That's not my favorite way of doing it, but they interviewed their subject matter experts, and they took it from the interview actually into a decision model. So that was the entire process of doing that. So things like that, I would be teaching that, or that would be an opportunity to teach these methods. There's many different things. Appreciative inquiry is another method being used, where you're focusing on, your ideal state as opposed to always on your problems.
And any specific software tools you could call out that would do that, just to offer some examples?
My favorite one is the whiteboard and the pen. That is my favorite. And then, of course, with the little tracker on it, and it puts it right in there for you. So.
Along with the technology's got to go, and I think we all realize this, that there's got to be some kind of the technology is the enabler, but what is it enabling? And so being able to build a content consciousness that occurs when those tools are introduced or being is a big key. But I think you're trying to hit at, are there some name brands of technology?
No, yes, that too. But believe me, I use whiteboards all the time. I've got 2 of them in my office. And how many times do my pens go dead while I'm in the middle of in the trash can?
Well, it's like Prezi. I mean, I would use Prezi if I had to use something electronic. It's everywhere, ubiquitous. People can see it. You can upload it. You can have audio with it. You can, put video on it. You can zoom in and zoom out as far as you want. So things like that. That's also, if you're going to ask what would I use that a lot for a lot of people.
Technology-wise, I guess we're all cautious and saying, hey, let's go use this tool, X, Y, Z, just because technology changes so much. But there's also other tools that we're not familiar with that do work better. It comes down to, hey, what are you familiar with and what do you know a lot of times? So there's probably got to be a fundamental base. We would probably want to see some kind of wikis and forums and blogs and microblogs, the chat, the video chat. What other technologies?
Ontology development tools.
Auditing tools, quality index tools. And then possibly, how do you curate that? So how do you get it out to the masses? And somebody will say mechanical Turk. Throw it out there and let crowdsource. And that goes back to teaching the tools, but also teaching that content consciousness, because people think the tool will do it for them, as we all know.
So just to piggyback, I think that if we actually had a competency model and we were all looking at where the big gaps are and thinking of technological enablers, I really believe that we need a breakthrough in a new technology, because we're trying to solve this with, okay, what technologies are out there that are going to help us? Okay, we're going to need collaboration and there was a time before people saw a spreadsheet on a computer, and there was a time before we've seen everything else that you could name, apps on your phone and so forth. I think that, to get back to your earlier point as far as categories of knowledge management and so forth, but the knowledge science engineering, that an area of research into really what technological enablers are missing that's going to help us move to the kinds of worlds that we're describing. I think that we're going to find that there's something that needs to be developed out of this center.
Okay, we have 1 minute left, I believe, Denise, right? So I'm going to ask you one question and just give us a one-sentence answer, and I'll start out and I'll give you an example. The question is, what is the first problem the stakeholders for the center need to tackle for technology? Here's my answer. They need a mission statement.
They need a noble cause.
I think they need to have a strategic plan that lays out maybe a regional or, the regional hubs, how they may function.
They need to know how to engage. So do we talk to you? Do we phone call? Is it an email?
If I were to engage in selfless motion, I'd say they need my book, but I wouldn't say that. They
But you did.
I saw that somewhere.
What's the name of the book?
But I do think that you need a sponsor.
Very good. Thank you very much.